In episode 6 we saw that Tor Andrae claimed there were hidden allusions in St Ephrem's hymns to Hurries in paradise. In this episode, two well-known scholars challenge that claim and suggest he has made a mistake. Who is right? Coming right up. Two modern scholars in particular have contested Tor Andrae's view that Ephraim the Syrian's words can be taken to prefigure in any way the wide-eyed, dark-eyed Hurries of Islamic tradition. Both the Syriac scholar Dom Edmund Beck and Christopher Luxenberg have opposed it. Beck made his critique from the perspective of the proper understanding of Ephraim's stanza in its context in Midrasha 7 on paradise. In particular, he proposed that Andrae had been misled in his interpretation by a faulty reading in the text of the Midrasha as it appears in the Editio Romana of Ephraim's complete works. As it happens, the Syriac word for grapevine, gupna, or plural gupne, is grammatically feminine, a point that, according to Beck, escaped the attention of both the editor of Ephraim's text of Midrasha 7:18 on paradise in the Editio Romana and Tor Andrae. It was wrongly written in the Roman text in the masculine form, i.e. sohin, instead of the correct feminine form, sohan. Specifically, in the first half of the stanza, when the text says of the one who in this life abstained from wine, that the Syriac participle translated as he is eagerly awaited by the grapevines was wrongly written in the Roman text in the masculine form, i.e. sawhin, instead of the correct feminine form, sawhan. Not recognizing that the grapevines feminine were the ones who, according to Ephraim, would then receive such a one into their pure bosom, Andrae was misled to think that the text was discreetly speaking of some unmentioned pure virgins on the order of the Quran's dark-eyed Hurries who would be awaiting the monk in paradise.
Allah Azza wa Jal tells us about what He has prepared for us in this villa, in this huge palace, in this tent. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the Hur al-Ain. How do you even begin to describe the Hur al-Ain? First of all, Allah Azza wa Jal created them with His own hand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them directly. Now Allah creates directly many things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates things indirectly. Indirectly meaning, for example, like us now, we are children, we're born to a mother and father. That's still Allah's creation, but Allah creates us indirectly. But Allah Azza wa Jal has created these hur directly to like they say, the best specification, the best possible, you can't imagine. But just to give you an idea of the hur. First of all, this word hur, it means like a maiden or a fair, beautiful woman. And al-ain is the plural of a word which means wide-eyed. They have wide eyes. And one of the things, if one of them were to look over onto this world, the entire world would be filled with light. And her khimar, her headscarf, the veil that she wears over her head is better than the dunya and everything that is in it. The least of the people of Jannah will be married to two of the Hur al-Ain. But we're not interested in the least. We want the most. 72 of the Hur al-Ain. Prepared for who? For the believers, for the people who kept themselves, like we talked about, those people who kept themselves chaste in this dunya. They didn't go out looking, they didn't go out seeking, they didn't go out committing haram. And Allah Azza wa Jal prepared for them the Hur al-Ain. These beautiful, wide-eyed virgins. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, Inna ansha'nahunna insha'a. We have created them a direct creation, a magnificent creation. We have made them into virgins, not just into virgins by the way, but Allah Azza wa Jal, as He mentioned, لَمْ يَطْمِثْهُنَّ إِنسٌ قَبْلَهُمْ وَلَا جَانٌ. No man, no jinn has ever touched them, has ever had any intimacy with them. They have been created, each one of them, for their husband specifically. They don't lift their eyes up to any other man. They were made only for this one particular man who is going to be from the people of Jannah. You know, this one individual, custom tailored for this person. And not only that, but he will also be married to his wife, if he has one from the wife, or if he has more than one from the wife of this, or the wives of this dunya that he was married to. And let's not forget the ladies as well, because we shouldn't, you know, sometimes we talk about the hur and, you know, talk about the fact that they, you know, they have this amazing skin that you can see, it's like translucent, you can see, almost see through it. You can understand what is meant, because you see someone who's very, very fair. You know, if you see a, you know, sort of a girl who's very, very fair, and you can almost see the veins and the, you know, coming through the skin. This, you know, woman, we talk about the hur, and then, you know, sometimes the sisters start feeling, well, what about us? And we keep saying, don't ever think evil of Allah. Don't ever think that Allah will give you less than you desire. You know, this dunya is a dunya of competition. Alhaakumut takathur. You're always, you know, competing with each other. And, you know, there's competition for love. There's competition for, you know, among co-wives. There's competition. There's a feeling of kind of, sort of people competing against each other and wanting to better one another. That's the meaning of alhaakumut takathur. You know, you're competing against each other, who can be better. But that doesn't exist in Jannah. We've taken this jealousy and this hatred and all of this horrible feeling, we've just taken it out of their hearts. And yes, Allah Azza wa Jalla has told the men about the hur. Why? Because men are men. And you know, men have a temptation sometimes to have a wandering eye and have a look at what is across the road, and you know, maybe have a look at what is on the internet and have a look at this and have a look at that. So Allah Azza wa Jalla wants to give you something that you can strive for, that is better than that is more motivating, that you want to say, no, I'm going to cover my gaze because I've got some ladies waiting for me in Jannah.
The important point for Beck was his satisfaction that he had successfully removed the textual basis for Tor Andrae's suggestion that Ephraim had anticipated the Hurries. What is more, Beck also showed that, as in other passages of the Madrashi on paradise, so in this one, Ephraim was evoking the imagery of a lush garden and speaking of the overhanging trees and grapevines of paradise that offer their bunches of grapes to the blessed. As a case in point, he cited the example of Madrasha 9, 3 and 4. So as an example, let's have a look at Madrasha 9, 3 and 4. The text is here in the slide. Should you wish to climb up a tree with its lower branches, it will provide steps before your feet, eager to make you recline in its bosom above, on the couch of its upper branches. So arranged is the surface of these branches, bent low and cupped, while yet dense with flowers, that they serve as a protective womb for whoever rests there, who has ever beheld such a banquet in the very bosom of a tree, with fruit of every savour ranged for the hand to pluck. Each type of fruit in due sequence approaches, each awaiting its turn. Fruit to eat and fruit to quench the thirst. To rinse the hands there is due, and leaves to dry them with, after, a treasure store which lacks nothing, whose Lord is rich in all things. So we can clearly see that this is simply a vineyard image. It's not that of concubines or anything fruity in the sexual sense. So I think Tor Andrae is reading too much into the text, and this is, according to Beck, is because he's made a fundamental mistake with the grammar. Now, if we turn to Christopher Luxenberg, he argues that in fact there are no such things as Hurries in the Quran at all. After a brief review of the standard scholarship, including the view that the notion of the virgins of paradise is due to Persian influence on the later exegetical tradition, Luxemburg, who pledged to proceed on purely philological grounds in his examination of the matter, nevertheless begins his examination with the reaffirmation of his basic non-philological and presumed operating principle. He says it is not the case that the prophet had misunderstood Christian illustrations of paradise, but rather that the later Islamic exegesis had misinterpreted the Quranic paraphrase of Christian Syriac hymns. And of course the question is, who's right here? Is it Tor Andrae? Did he read too much into the text? Or is Beck and Luxemburg right when they say that actually there's nothing to see here, folks, there's a grammatical mistake, and it really was Persian influence that read the idea of Hurries into the text. Luxemburg observes that there would be such an inconsistency if the likes of the Hurries were not to be found in the scripture. Then the Quran, against its usual assertion, would have thus produced proof that it had not come from God. And he goes on at the same place to say the Quran takes as its starting point the axiom that the scripture preceding it, the Old and New Testament, has been revealed, understanding itself as a component of this scripture. To be consistent, it derives from this the claim that it itself has been revealed. From this premise and the corollary that the Quran takes the scripture as its model, Luxemburg observes that there would be such an inconsistency if the likes of the Hurries were not to be found in the scripture. Then the Quran, against its usual assertion, would have thus produced proof that it had not come from God. It's not logical for the Quran to assert that there are Hurries in heaven, because there's no such suggestion in the Bible. But, says Luxemburg, the Quran is not to blame if, out of ignorance, people have read it so falsely and projected onto it their subjective, all-too-earthly daydreams. Luxemburg applies his signature philological method not only to the rasm of the phrase Hurin, but to all the passages in which the Quran's language has been thought to evoke just such imagery. Christoph Luxemburg first of all attended to the enigmatic phrase at the heart of the matter, the canonical Quran's twice repeated utterance, and I leave you to read that, which is found in Surah 44:54 and 52:20. Stripping away the customary vowel markings and diacritical points from the basic Arabic script, and presuming the Arabic scripture's original intention to yield a Syro-Aramaic reading, with attention to other Quranic passages, and the reminder that, with the supposed Hurries, the Quran would be contradicting scripture, Luxemburg delves into the Syriac grammar and lexicon for a likely alternative reading consistent with the prominent imagery of grapes and grapevines. But first, on Arabic lexical and grammatical grounds, he argues that the conventional reading is impossible, and having thus disposed of the imagined Hurries, which he says disappear ipso facto into thin air, he says, thus too would be removed the related contradictions in the Quran, and objectivity would be restored to the Quranic statement cited above, to the extent that the claim documented in the scripture, according to which one is neither married nor given in marriage in paradise, is now confirmed. He recalls Edmund Beck's rejection of Tor Andrae's suggestion that the Hurries might have been adumbrated in Ephraim the Syrian's Madrashe, and Beck's further indication of the prominence of the imagery of grapes and grapevines in Ephraim's depiction of the garden. Taking his cue from here, Luxemburg found his interpretive frame of reference for the enigmatic Arabic phrase in the realm of viticulture, and with this insight in mind he explored the orthographic, grammatical and lexical possibilities of the bare Arabic rasm, the unvoweled and unpointed original script. After some detailed grammatical and lexical explorations, and with the image of garden bowers in mind, construed of grapevines, with their overhanging clusters of grapes, Luxemberg proposed the now famous Syro-Aramaic reading, "We will make you comfortable under white crystal clear grapes." Jan van Riet suggested an alternative to Luxemburg's reading of the phrase, against the background of a deep study of the development of the grapes and grapevine motif in biblical and patristic sources, which he suggests is lying behind the passages in Ephraim the Syrian's Midrash on paradise. Van Riet proposed that the Quranic phrase in question might better be read as a calque on the Syriac phrase Kura da Inbin, attested in the Syriac of 2nd Baruch, which could be rendered into Arabic as a certain measure of grapes of wine. In a long footnote in a later edition of his work, Luxemburg rejected Van Riet's suggestion, but the latter's sketch of the early development of the grapes and grapevines motif in early Christian literature nevertheless remains a valuable contribution to the discussion. Luxemburg neglects finding instances of the actual currency in Syriac literature of phrases like his postulated white crystal grapes, construed on the basis of grammatical and lexical possibilities alone. On the other hand, he does not consider the full context of the passages to which he refers in Ephraim the Syrian's Midrash on paradise, where marital metaphors definitely do appear. So while he rejects Tor Andrae's interpretation, there is still a case for Andrae's take on this. Now, recently I've received translations of Ephraim's Midrash on the church, and currently I'm going through that, and I hope to find possible instances of this phrase, white crystal grapes. Griffith's point here is that Luxemburg's methodology was pre-stacked to reach a certain conclusion. He says that what is more, it appears from his own words quoted above that it was not philology in the first place, but a preconceived line of scriptural reasoning and an idiosyncratic view of the Quran's origins that first prompted Christopher Luxemburg to reject the Hurries of the Islamic exegetical tradition. He then used Syro-Aramaic philology to produce another reading of the Arabic phrases actually appearing in the Quran. I don't like Griffith's point here about viewing Luxemburg's view as idiosyncratic. I think that's a bit unfair. I think his view is legitimate, and it seems to take into account the historical sequence of events much more than just simply following the standard Islamic narrative. While the Midrashis are often mentioned by scholars, their content itself has often been neglected. The collection of 15 Midrashi on paradise are preserved in an early 6th century manuscript written in the city of Edessa in the year 519 AD by an otherwise unknown scribe named Julian. In our next video, we will look into their content and try and answer the question once and for all: who has got it right? Was it those that say Ephraim was only talking about grapes? Was it those who say he was hinting at something more on the lines of the Hurries? Or maybe was it somewhere in between, where the vineyards are ultimately symbolic of a metaphor, i.e. paradise is the bridal chambers of the blessed? So that's what we're going to look at in the next episode. It's a lively debate, and it'll be interesting to see which way we go on all of this. So thank you for watching. If you're enjoying the content, please hit the like button, and if you don't want to miss the upcoming episodes, please consider subscribing. See you all in the next episode.